Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you to enter the ballroom? The second panel is slowly starting. Thank you.
Potrebujeme odchytiť. Ale už je zase inde. Keď sa mal suknúť, tak to rýchlejšie tam dostaneme. Ale
tu stojí, takže ešte keď...
Ne.
Začneš teda tou úvodnou otázkou, že...
Áno, každému. Takže uvediem ten panel a začnem s tou úvodnou.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are about to start the second panel of today's conference, chaired by Mr. Richard Kwasniewski. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you in this panel. We will discuss the gas industry and gas topics, concretely replacing of the supplies of Russian gas in terms of Russian-Ukrainian conflict and the latest development in the Europe. Last year, when I was moderator of this panel, we were mostly discussed some other issues. Maybe we will look more to the future by discussing about the hydrogen, about the biomethane, about the new gas projects. But after 1 year, the situation has extremely changed. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has completely rewritten gas map as we know it for years. The Russia has ceased to be the main supplier of gas to Europe, which is now Norway, and LNG suppliers from different countries. And the issue of energy security has come to the forefront of all discussions, policies, and policymakers. For Slovakia, this is a crucial question as well, because we are in the heart of the Europe, we are the gas crossroad, and currently the second most gasified country in the European Union. Also, it is critical issue for the V4 countries and the region of the Central Europe, because we are landlocked in our geographical position. And after replacing of Russian gas, we will be at the end of all pipelines, dependent from the open routes and solidarity in case of any disruptions. So I'm happy that we can discuss this topic today also with my panelists, so I can introduce them. Mrs. Anna Maria Fehér, head of CEO cabinet MVM Energy from Hungary. Mr. Rastislav Ňukovič, Director General of company Ustream and also President of the Slovak Gas and Oil Association.
Good morning.
Mr. Sergij Pereloma, Chief Executive Officer of the company Uktrans.
Good morning.
And Mr. Miroslav Kula, Chairman of the Board of Directors and Chief Executive Officer of company SPP.
Good morning.
So at the beginning, my question for all panelists, after the 9 months of the conflict, of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, how was affected your businesses, your companies? What has changed? What did you maybe do in your management to cope with this situation? I can start with Mrs. Fay.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, and I'm really happy that I could join this conference today. I would like to say some words briefly about our company MVM Synergy. MVM Synergy is part of the flagship energy company in Hungary, MVM Group, which is the 13th largest company in Central Europe by revenue. And MVM Synergy is the natural gas wholesale arm of MVM. So we are dealing with natural gas, and the core of our supply is a long-term contract with Gazprom and an LNG contract at Krik LNG in Croatia. So the last year really affected our business management really seriously. Actually, these disruptions, what happened in the last year, are unprecedented, and also the extreme high prices affected our company really strongly. Now, thanks to the different energy routes we have in our portfolio, we succeeded to solve these disruption problems. So regarding the volumes, we could say that we are fine for this winter. However, next winter is another question, so we can discuss it later. But we also expect a significant decrease in the consumption due to the fact that due to the extreme high prices, the consumers started to turn to renewables, and they try to find different solutions to substitute natural gas. So really briefly, that's the current situation now at Synergy.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nukovic, the company Ustream has this year has a really very nice milestone when you opened the new interconnector between Slovak Republic and Poland, which is I think very important step to achieve a full diversification of routes to the Slovak Republic, because we are connected with all of our neighboring countries. So what is maybe your position to the situation in this year?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for question and invitation. Well, there is also another important date this year. By coincidence, Ustream celebrates this year 50th anniversary of gas transmission, natural gas transmission via territory of Slovakia. And without not hiding, our history was connected with transportation of Russian gas. So since 1972, there was almost one-directional east-west transportation from Veľké Kapušany to Baumgarten in Austria and Lanžhot in Czech Republic. And it was till 2009 where there was the first gas crisis. Since that time, we implemented a series of projects how to diversify our system. First was reverse flow from Czech Republic, then Austria followed. It was mentioned that there was reverse flow to Ukraine. In parallel, we built interconnection with Hungary, and the last one, which was missing, was interconnection with Poland, which we successfully introduced this summer. So thanks to this, Slovakia now is connected to all neighboring countries and can serve as a platform to transport any source of gas within the region. But the first question was, what is the impact on our company? So with this history, of course, impact is very significant and negative. I can demonstrate it on figures of annually transported volumes of gas. If I take last 7 years, the average of annually transported amount was 57 BCM per year. The record was in 2019, where there was 68. We experienced significant drop in transportation even in 2021, when Gazprom still followed his contracts. Nevertheless, there were no gas put on spot market. This was obvious in many recent years. Plus, there was no gas injected into European gas storages. So we dropped to slightly above 40 BCM. And this year, we anticipate transportation volume not more than 25 BCM. So this is really a significant impact. And of course, it will be figured out also in financial terms.
Thank you very much. Maybe to complete the picture of Slovak Republic, I can now take word to Mr. Kula, the representative of the company SPP, which did in the previous months really very important steps to decrease the gas dependence of Slovak Republic from Russian gas. So maybe you can tell more.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for the question. Well, you can imagine what happened early this year was a shock for the whole world. And I think the same applies for our company. You can imagine that in the history, we were always dependent on one source of gas. I mean, typically it was to sign a 20-30 years contract with one company. And yes, we had certain, let's say, contract revisions or price revisions relatively frequently in the past, but we never discussed the volumes, in terms of the physical supply. It was a rather a different question or different topic on the table, that we would like to decrease the volumes, that were originally in all the contracts. And suddenly, from one day to another, of course, you having certain shock of actually being at risk not to get any gas at all. So, of course, the whole company was primarily working on diversification and getting the different sources of gas. Nowadays, I can say that successfully we have achieved 2/3 diversification, so 2/3 of the imported gas are now coming from other sources than Russia. So that's one thing. Second, of course, this was not only the supply shock, but as well price shock. And thanks to conservative strategy of our company in terms of the hedging and fixing the prices for our customers and the whole portfolio, basically all the customers are getting what they have signed with us as a contract. None of the customers was disconnected or somehow influenced, so we kept all the contractual premises and promises to the customers. So from this perspective, at least for this year, customers were basically having no real impact, from this situation. Of course, this is changing for the next year and next years. We have to deal with it, and you see the reaction of customers, where some of them are limiting their production or stopping the production because of the price. But at the moment, as I said, with full storages and having the hedging policy in place, more as we successfully, overcame the first shock, from what happened in early this year.
Thank you very much. We are really happy that we have here also representative of Ukraine in person, Mr. Pereloma. So I think it's obvious that Ukraine is very hard affected by the conflict. We have also seen in the previous weeks very hard attacks of Russian forces to the Ukraine's infrastructure, energy infrastructure. So maybe also the partial question is if your infrastructure, underground gas storages or maybe pipelines, are also affected by these attacks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for the wonderful opportunity to be here in person. And, well, answering the question, I should say that if you'll meet a Ukrainian who will say that his life wasn't changed since February 24th, it's not true. There is no single person or no single company, no single business in our country who is not affected. Different companies, different people were affected in different ways. Half of the nation took weapon and started to protect and to defend our country and our territory. The second part of the country is working to make our economics alive and to support our soldiers, our boys, our girls, who are now risking their life to protect our values, to protect our territory, to protect the things we do believe in. Talking about Ukhrtynsk gas, yes, despite severe attacks from Russian side, rocket attacks on civilian infrastructure, which is absolutely a terrorist act, they cannot achieve any significant success in the battlefield, so they're attacking civilians. All people, children, infrastructure objects. But up to present moment, we, like a storage system operator, we are happy to admit that we are still okay. So we were not affected up to this moment. No guarantees in future, certainly. And the question was originally what was changed, actually. Many things were changed. Certainly having in mind all the risks which are in place today in all territory of my country, we did a lot to strengthen our security measures. Certainly it's not the right time to say what we did in particular. I think we'll discuss it after our victory. But we did, I think, everything which was possible in this respect. Certainly, we face the necessity to relocate some of our offices, some of our branches, some of our subsidiaries, because especially during springtime, the front line was moving quite actively, and you do remember that we have seen, unfortunately, Russian troops near the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, in the northern part, in the southern part, much more than they are today. But due to successful actions and due to heroism of our armed forces, now the situation is completely different. And I'm ready to say that Ukhrtynsk gas was and still is fulfilling all our obligations for our clients, both residential and non-residentials. When the war started, I was talking to many of our clients and friends from European countries, which they're asking, could you explain that you have a war, but all your services are working? All the digital platform is working with no interruptions at all. You are keeping a customs warehouse regime active, whole transportation regime as an active, and yes, it was not easy, but despite all the risks, despite the military operations we are unfortunately facing every day in our country, despite the rocket alarms which are every day almost all over the territory of my country, we still are in a position to give good services for our clients. And I hope that last 271 days of Russian invasion, it's not a conflict, Richard, as you have mentioned, it's a war. We can say it's a military war or it's a terrorism, but it's not a conflict, it's much more than the conflict. And like today's speakers were mentioning, it's not a war Russia with Ukraine, it's a war of Russians with Europe, with European values, with European practices, with European way of living. And unfortunately now Ukraine is paying very high price in this war to be a shield of Europe, possible to say even like this. But again, talking about our business, about core business, gas storage, we are working successfully. And today, a bit later, I hope during this panel, I will try to show what we are already offering and what we would be ready to offer to our European partners in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When we are discussing the current situation, of course, we have to maybe discuss also the preparedness for the current winter. The level of the storages is now filled in the Europe on the 95% roughly. So it looks pretty very good comparing, for instance, the last year. So my question is, are we really very good prepared for this winter? Do we maybe expect some disruptions concerning the supplies to the consumers? What do you expect?
So actually, in my opinion, now, due to the geopolitical situation, we are facing a regulatory tsunami in the last year, because policymakers try to find a solution how to ensure security of supply in the energy industry. Due to this, I think so that the storage levels are quite good in the region. However, we shouldn't forget the financial part of this. So the extreme high prices caused really shock waves in the energy industry. So it's really difficult to finance these prices and these volumes. Besides this, I would say that from volume point of view, we are really good. So but you know, in this situation, you can never say that it's for sure we will be fine for the winter, and especially for Q1 2023. However, the question is that how can we inject in the spring, which will come next year. So I think this is the main issue now. From Synergy, we are evaluating different sources and different routes, different options, actually, such as our industry fellow players. So we try to find diversified solutions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jukovic?
In terms of preparedness for this winter, we are basically solving two issues. First is safety of supply, if we have enough gas to support all customers, either households and industrial customers. And second issue is extensive gas prices. Focusing on the first one, it looks that we will, as a whole European Union, able to survive the winter without any interruptions, and it is thanks to the fact that Europe was within this year able to attract almost all free LNG available on world market because of very high prices in Europe. And plus, undoubtedly, there is also aspect of Russian deliveries, significantly limited, but there were some. And thanks to that, we have extraordinary high level of gas storages. Plus, it looks that saving of energy of European Union is really significant. We checked figures in Slovakia, and year to date, if we compare 2022 and 2021, we have 19% decrease in gas consumption, what is really significant and is more than anticipated 15% saving set for European Union. Of course, it is also thanks to very appropriate weather within October, where usually some withdrawals from gas storages are very obvious. This year, real withdrawal season started only a few days ago, and it was also visible last month, where some LNG cargoes were waiting in Spain to be LNG to be delivered. And because there was no demand, stock levels at very high level, average level in Europe is now more than 95%. It was difficult to deliver this gas. And even it resulted in very low gas prices for a couple of days on day-ahead market. Now the correlation is back, so now gas is back at levels over 100 euro per 1 megawatt. And what is challenge? So regarding to safety of supply for this winter, I suppose we are safe. Challenge will be next year, how to be prepared for the next year when, in the event, if Russian gas is completely stopped. Our analysis and our models shows that it is not possible to fulfill gas storages for not this, but upcoming next winter for more than 70%. So there is really challenge to focus on safety of supply next year.
And do you think that Russia can really completely stop all supplies to the Europe? I mean, not only the pipeline Brotherhood, but also via Turk Stream?
It is a difficult question. It is a bit paradoxical that Nord Stream 1 is not working Yamal since December, but transport via Ukraine, where there is war, is still working, plus Turkish Stream, Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Hungary, of course, at very limited level. I suppose that these deliveries will continue because there were some occasions where it was really shaky and flow still continues. So probability that it will continue, I consider higher than that it will be stopped. But anything can happen. Some missile in Ukraine can completely stop our corridor. So it's difficult to predict.
Thank you. Mr. Kula, Slovakia has currently received the gas not only from Russia, also from Norway, also from LNG suppliers. So do we feel safe for the next winter concerning the security of supply?
Well, first of all, as it was already mentioned, we are in much better situation this year than last year in terms of the storage. But we have to say as well that if you just count the capacities of storage in Europe, you will find that, of course, that this is not sufficient, for Europe if all the flows are stopped to cover the demand. So yes, we are in better situation. We have diversification contracts, but there has to be certain solidarity within the European Union. Because imagine if one of the nations would basically stop the flows or ban the export from between the countries, then you find out you're in a situation that you have just your own storage and nothing else. And this is basically not sufficient. So yes, if the flows continue, if there is, let's say, some international law prevailing and what was agreed in the contract with different suppliers is guaranteed, and of course we have purchased several LNGs. But yes, if the ship comes and somebody doesn't stop the flow, to the destination of that gas, then everything's fine. If it stops, then of course we have a problem. And it's not about Slovakia because we are, in terms of the storage capacities, I think pretty much in the very beneficial situation comparing to other countries. But if this happens all over Europe, then we have a serious problem.
Okay. What about Ukraine? What are your expectations concerning the current winter?
Sure. I should say that I fully agree with Rostislav, with Miroslav, because both of them just picked up some words I was going to say. That to confirm Rostislav's idea that this heating season, this winter, would be much easier than the next one. And to successfully overcome a next one, we should think, by saying we, I mean all the European countries, to think how we have to be ready for it and to start these preparations as soon as possible. Probably all the decisions have to be taken this winter, and this would give a good chance for all European countries to act immediately after this heating season, and withdrawal season from underground gas storage all over Europe would be finished in spring. I don't know whether it would be April, early April, late April, but I hope in April, usually it should be like this. So the action plan should be on the table. And the second very important idea was mentioned by Miroslav, that if we will compare all European storage capacity, probably, certainly, it is not enough at the moment. Could I ask for the slide, please? And that's here Ukraine comes. What is very interesting and could be very, let's say, mutually beneficial for Ukraine and for European countries as well. What Ukraine is ready to offer. Ukraine, I would like to remind you that we have historically storage capacities which is number 3 in the world after the United States and Russians. In Europe, we have the largest capacity for storages, which is almost 31 billion cubic meters. In case we will be talking in megawatts, is 340 terawatts. So certainly, some of our storage capacity, Ukraine as a country is using for ourselves to be prepared for the winter. But we have, let's say, a possibility to offer for European countries, for our European countries, at least 160 terawatts of storage capacity. What is 160 terawatts? Let's think, it's about 14% of all European storage capacity. Not bad. It's up to slightly less than 4% of annual European gas consumption, actually, which is a lot. And certainly, when we are talking about storage and the figure and index that, like it was mentioned today for Slovakia, that 94% is a storage fulfillment now. For Slovakia, because they do have a total capacity about 3.5 billion cubic meters, it is okay. But different countries have different storage capacities. And in case we look for even our neighbors, Baltic countries, Estonia and Lithuania, they do not have any storage capacities at all. The same is for Moldova. If you look for Poland, they can store simultaneously only up to 15% for their annual consumption. But historically, European countries were trying to keep up to 25% of their consumption in their storages. So if you have 25, you may think that you are more or less safe and well prepared for the coming winter. So it's absolutely obvious that our neighbors, which are located in our Eastern European region, could have huge benefits from storing their gas reserves in Ukraine. Because even if we look at the map of Ukraine, we will see that about 80% of our storage capacity are located at the western part, very close to the Ukrainian border with Poland, with Slovakia, and historically they were built because of this geographical factor. What else is necessary to say? I'm very confidently saying about future, not about today, because really all Ukraine believes in our army, and we have no doubts that we'll have the victory in this war. We want it to have as soon as possible, because every day costs the life of our citizens. But we are ready that one day we'll face. That's why we can discuss our future and be sure that it would come. What else necessary to say? Probably all of you know this burden share mechanism, which was announced by energy community this year, these new requirements which were adopted this August for all European countries. It's about the strategic reserves of European countries, and the countries which do not have enough storages or do not have storages at all can have benefits by storing natural gas in other storages. That's again about the role of Ukraine and about what Ukraine can offer to European gas market for all the Europe, and our neighboring countries, first of all, can have benefits and to feel more confident when we are preparing for next winters, not one, but many coming winters, and to pass them smoothly. Also, it was also mentioned by Rostislav about the role of LNG, that to substitute Russian pipeline gas, certainly LNG delivers are absolutely necessary. And if we will see that last year, for example, before the Russian invasion to Ukraine, again, not a conflict, current existing LNG infrastructure was used up to 70% of their total capacity. Now it's is used for 100%, and new capacities, especially in Germany, have been built right now. So in case it would be done, and I'm absolutely sure it would be done, the total capacity of LNG next year in 2023 would be about 1,700 terawatts, enormous amount of natural gas, which could be theoretically delivered by means of LNG. But it's absolutely obvious that you cannot consume it immediately. And again, the question is where to store. And then we are back to Ukrainians' capacities. About the capacities, historically, we can offer a very good gas grid, which connects us with all European countries, especially Slovakia, Poland, Hungary. So traditional routes which Ukrainian plays a transit role in these directions, and now we also have gas reverse flows only from these directions. And this, after, like was also mentioned by Rostislav, you're one step ahead of me today. After you have completed the interconnected between you and Poland, it's additional source and additional possibility to deliver for further storing the gas from Polish and Baltic LNG capacities, which are already working. For example, like Svinousia, like Klaipėda, and other projects which are now considered for the construction. For us, just to understand probably interesting figures from the slide, what is 160 terawatts Ukrainian can offer? For example, for Estonia, it's 40 years of consumption. 40. For Slovakia, it's almost 3 years, in case you'll inject, in addition to your will have injected domestically, another 3 years you are safe. For Lithuania, it's more than 6 years. For Poland, it's 8 months. It's absolutely because of the size of the national storages and the size of, well, domestic consumption of these countries. So, when we are talking about tomorrow, and tomorrow we understand the necessity to change the map, gas map of Europe, which existed 9 months ago, it's a necessity to diversify the supplies, also to make reserves as much as possible, to make these reserves in a way that countries can help each other. Especially it's vital when some countries are lacking or do not have storage capacity at all. So it's everything which could be done. It's not easy. It's not would be done like this and everything starts working tomorrow. But Ukraine is offering, first of all, big capacity. Second, it's a reliable partnership, which was, let's say, confirmed during the last at least 3 years period. We have a very big number of foreign clients. We have more than 120 of them, and they do represent 28 countries from all over the world, not only Europe, but Asia, Northern America as well. Also, our tariffs for injection, storing, withdrawal are significantly cheaper in comparison with European tariffs in place in European countries, even if we will be accounting the transportation costs. But short-haul product gives a very competitive transport cost when you're delivering gas to Ukrainian storages and then taking them back to the European market. So the reliability of Ukretrans gas, like a storage operator in Ukraine, was confirmed last month. We have invasion, we have war, we have all things which are connected with this, but we are still performing with a 100% result, giving all the necessary services to our partners and to our clients.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
explanation. And you raised also some other questions which is important for this discussion. And it is the next year which going to be maybe more struggling for the European Union countries concerning the preparation for the next winter. So my question is maybe what do you think about some European solutions helping to achieve the 90% of fulfilling of the storages, which is kind of a new obligations. I mean, the measures like the common procurement of the gas in the level of 15%. So what do you think about these kind of solutions? Could it help?
I think it's difficult to evaluate these solutions and these proposals because we know that there is no silver bullet, so there is no one fits all. In Europe, there are differences between the member states. So what I previously mentioned that really many regulatory proposals we receive nowadays from the EU. I am also a member of the industry advisory group, which is dealing with the price cap and joint gas purchase mechanism. I do believe that it's definitely a helpful solution, and if we have physically available stock in storages, that's really a tool for security of supply, since this is the only one which is available physically and it's there. However, as it was mentioned previously, the storage sizes are really different in the EU. So I think we should mix the different tools. The storage is not sufficient alone. We need diversification, new routes, and also diversification in the energy mix. So we do need renewables as well.
Okay, Mr. Mukovic.
Okay, question was regarding the draft of regulation for enhancing solidarity through certain actions. Definitely it can help. Nevertheless, if you go through the text, the wording of that, it's still very general, and still a lot of details have to be set and implemented, and only after that we can figure out how important or how it can really help in practice. In general, what we need is to cover or to correlate again between demand and offer of gas. And that's true that currently we are facing lack of gas. That's why prices are so high, and a lot of solutions which are on table are rather some supportive mechanism how to subsidize this big price rather than tackle really the price. So only final solution is to balance demand and offer.
We've already received some questions via Slido, so I can use some of them to ask Mr. Kula, because they are addressed to you. So what is your opinion of the EU gas purchasing platform initiative? This is also my question, and to what extent it can be useful for the needs of SPP?
Mm-hmm. I think I can answer in broader terms. it's kind of going backwards a bit, you know, and rethinking, you know, what we have done in let's say recent history. We all used to have long-term contracts, and I'm talking about the source of gas, but in principle, the contractual relation with 23 years contracts and kind of long-term is well price stability and supply stability, and we change it to energy exchanges, and let's say the most common probably price agreement with any supplier is kind of like month ahead, day ahead price, so very short-term products, and suddenly now it doesn't work, or we have this price shock. You know, we are now surprised, but basically Europe was going into that situation for quite some time, and we have all kind of ended this long-term agreement and went into this new mechanism. Suddenly now we see it works in good times. Yeah, it doesn't work in bad times. And now we have to rethink, you know, make some kind of compromise, you know, that, okay, probably we need some long-term agreements with reliable partners. Probably we need more of these partners, not just one. And then we can talk about that some of these gas volumes probably can be then traded on short-term basis. So I think it can help in future. I think it's rather, let's say, a long-term discussion. So we shouldn't be never dependent, you know, 100% one way, 100% another way. You know, we now see, you know, that how much this diversification means in terms of the assets, in terms of the storages, in terms of the, let's say, price mechanisms and etc. So I think it's a kind of going a little bit backwards. We're thinking, you know, what we have done that didn't really work, and try to use the good one from the history. Of course, let's see, there are many interests. So EU, it's a relatively difficult place to find a common agreement and find, let's say, the one way forward, so it will take time. But I guess if we come to some kind of a, let's say, voluntary basis agreement that adding more and more volumes and agreements, and with, let's say, more reliable partners, to some extent it can help. Yeah? I think it's not a one-shot solution that automatically this is solved, but it's basically, again, one of the pillars, you know, how to provide a bit more stability in future.
Mm-hmm. So, and you opened this question of the long-term contracts. We've seen in the last year that European Commission refused this kind of contracts. I prefer the short-term contracts. Do you think that is the time that European Commission should maybe justify also the long-term contracts by purchasing of the gas from the LNG suppliers, like, I don't know, USA, Qatar, and these countries?
I think it has to be.
I think it has to be a mixture, yeah? And as I said, in the last few years, there was enormous pressure on price. I would compare it to some kind of production facility. So if you go for the price only, then basically the best is something like a just-in-time production and immediate delivery, you know, and very efficient without necessary storage, without necessary kind of bottlenecks. Suddenly, you know, we see that maybe we forgot part of the security in that supply. And if you go for security, it's the opposite, yeah? So it means basically diversification, it means assets, storage, LNG terminals, whatever you have. So basically, we need to, you know, kind of rebalance, you know, the price only to let's say, security plus price. And of course, it will cost some money and some time to rebalance, you know, this position. So I think all of this ways should be now reflected, and kind of the strategy should be more balanced, you know, between the price and security, whatever this means. But as I said, it will take time.
Okay. And one more question on you from Slido. There is no way to refill gas storages in 2023. Aren't current gas prices too low? This is the question.
Very difficult questions. You know, if I knew the answer, you know, what is the price of, if it's correct or not, probably I would be doing some different job. But let's say, yes, it seems that if you have a risk, you know, of having the storages filled next year, that it will push the price up. Yeah. On the other hand, what nobody knows, you know, in terms of the investments and either in storage or primarily in LNG, I would say, or interconnections, I think the main issue was as well the time, you know, of putting the assets into operations. Yeah? And so what was, of course, very difficult or kind of, let's say, not immanageable, you know, a few months ago, was that you put some terminal into operation within a few months. You know, what the regulatory procedures and building permits, etc. So of course there is a question of time. If the governments act quickly and really kind of accelerate the process. Some of the assets could be placed in months, not in years as it was previously, as we can see now. So there are now many terminals being built, and with all these procedures, maybe it's not a question of 1 year, but basically in 2 years, probably the problem is solved if we can accelerate. And now I think it's really the time to accelerate if you want to have the Europe secure for next year.
Thank you very much. This is a question also for Mr. Nukovic. Why do you think is Russia still sending gas to Europe? Isn't cutting of all gas supply to Europe the most rational move to create maximal pressure?
It's a very difficult question. I explained that now in a position that probably safety of supply issue of gas delivery is solved at least for upcoming winter, but we still have here a question of affordable gas prices. If you remember, significant increase of gas prices started in August 21, well before the war started, and the first starter was lack of LNG in Europe because there was significant increase of demand for LNG in Asia, and Gazprom only add to that he limited its deliveries to Europe. And then up to now, there were always several steps how to decrease deliveries when market was somehow stabilized. Then they always introduce some move and prices really up again. Now I suppose we reach certain kind of equilibrium that even if now Russian deliveries are stopped, it will not have a significant impact on current gas prices. But I definitely do not suppose as a good idea to stop the flows because of gas prices and to secure upcoming winter. Because, as I said in previous answer, to solve the issue, we can solve it only if there is balance between demand and offer. There were a lot of projects in terms of regasification terminals in Europe. It's amazing how quickly Europe can react. For example, Germany in February has no LNG terminal at all. Now they have, after a few months, first in Wilhelmshaven, and there are another one announced to be implemented within next year. So this capacity will be available, and this will significantly improve the situation in Europe. But hand in hand, we have to look also on sources, which is liquefaction capacities. And here is very valid your previous question regarding long-term contracts, because next year probably we will face worldwide and Europe specifically a lack of liquefaction capacities, I mean source rather than LNG regasification terminals in Europe. And only way how to enhance or speed up the development is to have long-term contracts for producers. This was their basic answer. And particularly now we are in a situation when during Corona crisis gas prices were very low and many projects for liquefaction bankrupted or were not able to be economically viable. So that's why we have to somehow solve that issue. And gas deliveries from Russia can only help the situation until we have complete plan B and this balance. Otherwise, we could face very high prices next year and next winter, and we will have lack of financial instruments to introduce Plan B, and also very important aspect is to speed up renewables.
Yes, this conference is dedicated to Central Europe. We're discussing the diversification supplies to Central Europe. We discussed LNG supplies, Norway. And what about the Southeastern Europe, the path from the Southeastern Europe? What do you think about the potential some other gas sources? I mean, from maybe Turkey, from Azerbaijan. What do you think about it?
Just one remark to the previous question, because it's linked to this question as well. It's very difficult to negotiate with suppliers if you are not allowed to negotiate on long term. So I think it's an issue, and the Commission also realized this. I think so that we are different options, as I mentioned previously. Also, for example, Turk Stream is a real option. However, I think that we are facing issue in the next 2-3 years. So on long term, Europe has different options and sources. But on midterm, so I would say in the next 2 years, we are still facing problem without Russian gases. I believe that it's also a capacity problem and also a supply problem. So there are bottlenecks, and LNG is the solution which can work nowadays.
Okay, I'm asking this question because of latest initiative of the TSO of Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia concerning the using the existing infrastructure by delivering the Azerbaijan gas or Turkey gas to the Central Europe. And as far as I know, there were the letters sending to the European Commission. So how is the situation with this infrastructure, Mr. Nukovic?
This initiative was linked to memorandum signed between Ursula von der Leyen and President of Azerbaijan on increasing gas deliveries from Azerbaijan. When we wanted all these countries and transmission companies with these mentioned countries to highlight that there are existing capacities, how to deliver this gas immediately or with really timely limited and financially limited actions, provide this gas into Central Europe and further to the whole Europe, which we consider as better idea rather than to reinforce stop towards Italy. And this initiative could also provide further more capacity solution, as it was original project called East Ring. So our proposal was to highlight existing capacities within these countries for the memorandum, and also that there is a possibility to enhance it in the future.
Thank you.
Currently, as the question was, what is the current situation?
State, yes.
Well, we are still awaiting response from European Union. What we expect is that at least this first step to use existing capacities will be welcomed, and then there is question mark about future.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kula, would you add maybe something?
You all said already.
Yes, okay. There is also a question for Mr. Pereloma from Slido. After your victory, Ukraine will be flooded with reconstruction money. So when do you see the best opportunities for investment in Ukraine and energy sector?
Well, I don't know who's the author of the question, but I love how it is formulated.
Anonymous.
Yes, I see, but I love how it is formulated because we can see both simultaneously the confidence that Ukraine would be victorious and the readiness to invest. Both things are very important for my country, it's 100%. But to be serious, I think that after war would be ended and Ukraine would be victorious, as was mentioned, it would be two main fields of investments. The field number one is to restore and to rebuild those energy objects which would be destroyed or, let's say, which suffered from attacks. To say now what could be the size and necessity for these investments is absolutely impossible, because all missiles shelling is still active almost every day, and we'll be able to assess the total damage of the energy system only after the war would be ended and stopped. But certainly it would be the second field of, for the possible investments. And it would be dependent not with rebuilding of the infrastructure which was built years and years ago, but it would be about the future, about new sources of energy, about the Green Deal, because now when there is a possible shortage of resources, like we are discussing today, certainly the Green Deal actions theoretically could be postponed for the number of years, but this way wouldn't be cancelled by EU. And the countries who have the same values and wants to be also a member of the European Union. So in Ukraine, we would be developing the Green Deal, the green transformation. And talking about Ukraine, certainly in this respect, two things would be important. Biomethane, absolutely, because Ukraine historically has very strong agriculture sector. It means raw materials for this type of fuel. Currently, even having a war at home, our authorities are working to change the gas standard, and they are changing the proportion in which biomethane could be added to the traditional natural gas within the grid. I think that Eustream has absolutely the same, not problems, but issues to deal with at home, but it's very obvious potential field for further investments. And certainly it's a hydrogen. I'm more skeptical about the hydrogen, not because it's very complicated to produce. At the moment, I do not see enough consumers, because to consume the hydrogen, pure hydrogen at least, each consumer has to change his own infrastructure, the internal grids, and it's very costly and time consuming. Then the transportation, which is also a question. Talking about hydrogen, I believe in blend, probably the blend of hydrogen to a certain proportion with natural gas. Yes, it's not so-called 100% green fuel, but much better with the traditional. So I think that these two streams, Ukrainian would be requiring investments, and these investments for 100% would be beneficial for the investors.
Thank you very much. We are opening the question of greening the gas industry, which is also important, and concerning the blending of hydrogen, I can say that we have in Slovakia a very successful project, H2 pilot, with blending the hydrogen in a small grid in one village, and the result was as far as I know, excellent. So we are prepared to develop, the highest level of blending. But there is also a question if can biomethane play important role in this part of Europe, and what dates and amounts are realistic. And company SPP are also very strong intentions concerning the biomethane projects. So what do you think, Mr. Kula?
It's marginal. It has to be said. Of course, it helps. Yeah, but as we discussed before, hydrogen or any other technology, basically it's still in the early stage, and the source or the amount of such gas, that can be produced in a relatively short time is small. Yeah, so I think, but as I said, any solution helps. Yeah, it will not come probably from one source, so we have to really diversify as well the primary source of energy, and it will help a little bit.
What about in Hungary concerning the biomethane?
I agree with Mr. Kula that it could help marginally. However, I think now everything can help. So, which is different, which are from different sources, and I think that now the timing is perfect for biomethane due to the extreme high natural gas prices. So I agree also with our Ukrainian colleague that hydrogen is not ready yet, so you need a different infrastructure for that. But biomethane you can just inject into the grid, and you can use as natural gas because of the same gas quality. However, now if we see the market situation, normally investors produce from biogas electricity because it's much more expensive than natural gas. So it's an issue that how to produce biomethane that is profitable and it could be a solution. But I do believe that really now it's the time for it.
And what is the maybe potential in Hungary? In Slovakia, it's 10% of the replacing of consumption of natural gas by biomethane?
I think it's also a question of feedstock. And also in Hungary, the agriculture sector could be a solution for this. I think it's between 5 and 10%, but definitely much more than hydrogen. However, we also have a hydrogen R&D project, the project Aquamarine, which is done by the Hungarian gas storage. But I think it's more research and development, and biomethane could be also a real source for customers.
Okay. For Mr. Nukovic, in this greening initiative is a question: how compatible are investment into gas infrastructure with green objectives?
Maybe I will start in more general. In Ustream, we take green targets, carbon neutral targets, as very serious one. I suppose the whole European Union cannot be blamed that their green targets are not ambitious enough. And what I would like to highlight is that we as gas people never challenged these targets. What we challenged is the way how to get there. And our narrative is that we should go within transition period with solutions which are proven and affordable. And only when the new one is prepared, mature enough, stable, reliable, and affordable, then we can switch. And now we can see, in the morning we had here protest of Greenpeace. If there is some solution from renewables already mature and available, then we don't have these high prices, we don't have energy crisis. So I don't agree with one of the sentences that gas equals to gas crisis or energy crisis. I suppose that gas can only help in this transition period how to achieve carbon and neutral goals. And maybe part of the current situation is maybe a bit naive policy to get to that goals merely earlier than technology is available. And I can see it from practice, and now I come to the core of that question. We started several initiatives to prepare for transportation of hydrogen, or in general carbon neutral gases, but definitely hydrogen will play the focal role in the future. We already started project how to separate and dedicate one of the pipeline. We have 4 of them, to one of them to dedicate for 100% hydrogen. We started with blending. There was mentioned that our sister company, sfpa.sk, started with blending of hydrogen up to 10%, and the project was successful. Our research shows that this blending up to 10% should be quite, let's say, easy in brackets, also in our terms. But if we are talking on blends higher than 10%, the requirements are basically the same with pure hydrogen. And definitely the technology and even suppliers, when we ask suppliers of pipelines, equipment, devices, compressors, they are working on that, but it's still not ready. So industry still has some time that this technology is mature enough to be implemented. Nevertheless, we already started this preparation, and I think the solutions are compatible, but need some time.
There is also an initiative of the European Commission concerning the supplies of green hydrogen to Europe from the Northern Africa and from Ukraine. So, Mr. Pereloma, after the conflict or after the war, it is possible that Ukraine could be really a supplier of the green hydrogen to Europe.
Absolutely, it is possible, and Ukraine have started investigations in this direction. For example, a year ago, for me it looks like it was might be a century ago, together with Rostislav, we took part in one of the conferences in Ukraine, in the city of Lviv. We had a discussion about the green hydrogen and the initiative between our countries, how it could be organized. War just stopped our field experiments in Ukraine about the storing of hydrogen. Because each gas storage is unique because of geological, let's say, structure it has. So we need to start, and we are planning to start this summer, this field, let's say, project to understand the ability, the effect, but unfortunately the war postponed these plans for certain months, I hope, not even years. And we are still working with our European partners in the theoretical part of this project. We do understand and we do realize that the future is there. How fast this future would come would depend on many, many things which were already announced by speakers. The readiness of consumers to accept, the readiness of transportation system, the readiness of equipment producers to provide the necessary quality which needs for the spare parts, for pipelines, for valves, for compressors, for all other production units which are involved in this process. But one day this future would come. So we absolutely do understand that we need to be ready and to prepare today.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that we are running out of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for discussion and also for your audience and attention. Thank you very much. And hope we see again in some kind of a interesting discussion. Once more, thank you.